The lady who became one of Rosanne Cash's most influential people and who won her father Johnny Cash's heart is June Carter. And at 70 years old, Rosanne Cash has decided to talk about her. If you want to know the significance of Rosanne, remarks, you should know her family's history. With a father who was already a country music icon and a stepmother who was a member of the illustrious Carter family, Rosanne sprang from a musical household, the original country music family. Their legacy lives on in American popular culture, their melodies resonating through the ages, influencing the future of the nation. What this meant for Rosanne was that history wasn't just something she'd read about in books. It was a part of her everyday life, from the dinner table to the living room to every performance her family went on. Expectations, rivalries, and a tangled web of love and jealousy were also part of that legacy. Stillness that Rosanne has chosen to shatter at this very moment. Growing up in the midst of a tempest of fame, history, and turmoil made Rosanne Cash's formative years unlike any other girl's. The first child of Johnny Cash and Vivian Liberto, his first wife, was born in 1955. In Rosanne's formative years, the duality of glitz and mayhem reigned. Her famous father was on the rise, a man whose deep voice and defiant flair were changing the face of country music. However, behind the scenes of that popularity was a family that was frequently torn apart by Johnny's absences, tour schedules, and becoming more reliant on drink and medication. This meant Rosanne had a father who was ostentatious and emotionally aloof at the same time. A guy adored by countless souls, yet he faltered in his efforts to support his most vulnerable family. At the time June Carter came into the picture, Rosanne was a little girl attempting to figure out how to live in a world where her wild outsiders reveled in Dad's fame. It caused domestic turmoil. When June initially entered her father's life, she was more of a stranger, someone who brought both comfort and chaos, rather than the cherished country legend that the rest of the world revered. Afterwards, Rosanne painted a complex picture. Of those initial impressions, she recognized June's charm, charismatic leadership, and unwavering loyalty to her father, but she also sensed the venom of envy and bewilderment. As the daughter who always seemed to be in the background, wondering how she fit into the ever-changing family dynamic, living up to the Carter-Cash union's standards was something that very few youngsters were able to handle. Rosanne was burdened by her father's fame, the wealthy name, and the specter of June, who became the rock of the family. While Johnny battled his own troubles, it might have appeared like a magical pairing. Two legendary country music artists uniting, harmonizing their voices on stage, and having their love story acknowledged nationwide. It was a constant juggling act of adoration and contempt, familiarity and mystery for a young Rosanne. As with the passing of time, she started to perceive June differently. Now, she didn't only see the lady who won her father's heart, she also saw June as the rock upon which her family's crumbling home rested. However, there was still an air of secrecy about those sentiments, along with unsaid tensions and the clumsy cadence of a daughter attempting to get it. She was a member of the most legendary country music dynasty that ever lived, rather from being influenced by the glitzy magazine covers or the cheers of sold-out crowds. Rosanne Cash's initial perceptions of June Carter were formed by the relatable scenes of a lady entering a broken family. June was already famous for herself. She was born into the first family of country music, and being a Carter meant always having a lightning-fast mind, biting humor, and unstoppable stage presence. From the outside looking in, she had an irresistible charm, beautiful woman that could make anyone's day with her grin alone. To Rosanne's younger self, though, she was someone else entirely. During a difficult period in her father's own marriage, she managed to win his heart and soothe his complicated emotions. Rosanne subsequently confessed that June was a haze in her early recollections, through a combination of adoration and distrust. You couldn't ignore June's enthusiasm. For one thing, she could put anyone at ease, make anyone laugh, and even save Johnny Cash from certain doom when he looked destined to sink. However, Rosanne couldn't shake the feeling that her father was falling even farther behind, lost in the tumult of stardom, substance abuse, and now a love that appeared to obstruct all other possibilities. June embodied both solace and upheaval for a young youngster who longed for consistency. Rosanne had a hard time making sense of this conundrum. She recalled how June's infectious laughter reverberated throughout the home, and how her hilarious anecdotes and catchy songs could ease any tension in the room. On the other hand, those same traits served as constant reminders that her biological mother had passed away and been replaced by an unfamiliar figure. Even as she tried, Roseanne found it difficult to compartmentalize June's sincere kindness from her own sorrow, maturing into an older person who could appreciate June's dedication. Even as a young woman, Roseanne bore the marks of those early meetings. Sometimes she worried that June was trying to steal her father's affections. There were times when June's irresistible charm seemed to eclipse her character traits, as well as instances when she subtly questioned her place in the galaxy. It would be years before Roseanne could look back with clarity and acknowledge the truths that time would inevitably disclose. But these initial impressions, compounded with the intricacies of family and fame, would continue to shape her image of her stepmother. There was no average life for the Cash family. Roseanne Cash would not completely comprehend the changes in dynamics until much later in life, after June Carter had been an integral part of it. Johnny and June seemed like the perfect pair from the outside looking in, playing country music, a beautiful symphony of affection and melody. Their family life was chaotic, difficult, and full of poignant and turbulent moments when they weren't in the public eye. June immediately stepped up to the plate, stabilizing not only a marriage but also a whole family that was centered around a man whose popularity was both a blessing and a curse. She served as a protective barrier from the mayhem that Johnny frequently brought home, in addition to her roles as mother, caretaker, and disciplinarian. Raised in that setting, Roseanne was subject to the constant but steadfast June, who cherished order, religion, and self-control, despite being in the midst of the whirlwind of Johnny's substance abuse and absences. June had the potential to be a caring and loving person who made sure everyone was fed, clothed, and cherished. Her other option, though, is unyielding, enforcing discipline and respect in a chaotic home. This paradox could be perplexing for Roseanne when she was younger. She observed June's resilience and the immense weight that her stepmother bore. Despite this, there were times when the very same power seemed like a burden, like yet more evidence of how drastically her life differed from the average child's. June's steadfast love for Johnny was an irrefutable fact that Roseanne could never overlook. She witnessed her stepmother save her father on multiple occasions, supporting him during his lowest points when he was on the verge of collapse due to fame, alcohol, and drug use. This type of dedication was both awe-inspiring and frightening. It modeled selfless love and devotion to a degree that Roseanne found difficult to achieve in her subsequent relationships. Undoubtedly, though, conflicts did exist. When Roseanne was at home, she occasionally felt like nobody was listening to her because two colossal beings, one was a worldwide phenomenon, and the other was a Carter whose reputation was just as prestigious. The mood at a family dinner might swing from boisterous celebration one night to awkward silence and hidden animosity the next. But even in those anxious moments, Roseanne could perceive June was the rock who kept the family together and ensured it wouldn't break apart. In retrospect, Roseanne realizes that her own childhood conflict between adoration and anger was often the root cause of what she perceived as tension. June may have lacked perfection, but she never wavered. Because of Johnny Cash's unwavering commitment, the Cash family was able to weather the storms of life. Roseanne Cash's ascent into the music industry seemed both certain and terrifying as she matured. On the one hand, she was deeply connected to music. Just being Johnny is in your blood, a member of the Carter family lineage and Cash's daughter. But there was also the crushing weight of expectation that came with that heritage. With a black dad and a stepmother from the Carter family, the original country music royalty, how could anyone dare to jump into the limelight? Roseanne acknowledged that she frequently battled the anxiety of being perceived as a copycat rather than a genuine artist. She wanted to show herself that she could succeed without the help of the legends to whom she was born and raised. Therefore, she started her profession in secrecy at first. Marriage. On the other hand, June Carter served as an inspiration and a constant reminder of what it meant to be great. It was June who never tried to get Roseanne to sing. She just wanted her to be herself and speak her mind. Just being in her company served to highlight to Roseanne how high the bar had been set. June would gently but firmly tell Roseanne in interviews that music was about truth, not perfection, and that listeners might overlook an occasional false note but never dishonesty. Roseanne carried those teachings with her and used them to inform her philosophy as a composer, earning her accolades for the honesty and profundity of her lyrics. Still, Roseanne occasionally sensed June's spectre, and she wondered if anybody would ever believe her achievements were her own, or if they were somehow connected to the Cash-Carter family, a family line. Roseanne did her best to establish her own personality apart from her family name before releasing her first albums, still was careful to leave room for her own creativity, as still honoring her history. June offered her support from a safe distance, never stepping on her toes but proudly observing. June never attempted to manage Roseanne or make her fit a template when it came to her music. Instead, June allowed her the opportunity to fall and rise on her own terms, which, as Roseanne later recognized, was more important than any private problems between them. Roseanne didn't completely understand the importance of that balance of guiding without interference until much later in life. June seemed distant or hesitant to get involved at times throughout that time. However, the truth was that she was bestowing upon Roseanne the most precious gift that a parent figure could bestow her, a chance to break free from the constraints of comparison and become an individual, even in a household where comparing oneself to others was inevitable. June taught Roseanne that a legacy doesn't need to be a chain, which is something she now regrets. If you want to build upon it, it can serve as a foundation. Approach it uniquely. There were times of quiet stress in the relationship between June Carter and Rosanne Cash. Despite all the love, support, and direction June gave to Rosanne Cash's life, having spent her formative years in a where the presence of two legendary figures always seems to cast a shadow. June was the type of girl that effortlessly held everyone's attention due to her quick mind, limitless energy, and profound faith. And for a girl just starting to find her footing in the world, that presence could feel too much. Roseanne frequently experienced conflicting emotions of jealousy and respect. She felt both grateful for June's contribution to her father's world, and sad that her own mother seemed to have been marginalized. Feelings like that sat dormant in a family based on stage presence, public persona, and musical composition. Certain realities were seldom stated openly. Roseanne later admitted that her fears and the overwhelming need to find her place in a family that appeared too big for her voice were the real culprits for many of her problems with June, rather than June herself. While June was busy with her own responsibilities and the never-ending struggle to keep Johnny alive, sober, and present, leaving little space for delicately handling the delicate feelings of a stepdaughter, it seemed like Roseanne was being ignored at times. There were times when she thought no one could see her suffering, and however, with the passage of time, she came to understand that June was just struggling to keep up with an impossible man and an impossible existence. However, their friendship was fashioned by those unsaid struggles, which intertwined bitterness, misunderstanding, love, and loyalty. Roseanne has considered the way during her younger years she occasionally passed to judgment on June, perceiving her more as an adversary vying for her father's love than as the lady who was sustaining him for their benefit. Only after some time had passed and I had grown up did I come to that knowledge, but there was genuine tension and profound quiet in that moment. Even as an adult, Roseanne acknowledged that she still fought some of those inner conflicts, suppressing her genuine emotions for fear of ridicule or rejection. It was only after some time that she realized June's strictness sprang from love, that June's firmness had helped her survive the upheaval, and that what had earlier felt awful quietness turned out to be strength. Looked at through the lens of her 70s, Roseanne has decided to freely confess, rather than accuse, about those problems, admittances of her own frailty, her own naivete, and the internal struggles that molded her into the person she is today. Throughout a long career, June Carter was a stabilizing influence and a competitor for her father's attention, and Rosanne Cash struggled with her sentiments toward both. The truth, though, became apparent to her as time went on and adulthood loosened her grip on reality. To the best of her ability, June adored her intensely. June Carter was not the type to overwhelm people around her with unending adoration or squander words. She showed her affection by doing little things that nobody noticed until Roseanne relived them in her memory. During Johnny's lowest points, June would often stay up with him, although despite their father's struggles, she never stopped worrying about the kids and doing her best to reassure them that they were loved and protected. According to Roseanne, June constantly pushed her to follow her gut and have faith in her own voice, even when she was afraid she didn't have what it took. A hidden letter of encouragement would do the trick sometimes. Sometimes it was just a casual chat during which June would gently remind her that being true to yourself is more important than seeking acceptance from others. Not every one of these displays of affection were as overt as Roseanne had hoped for when she was younger. Girl. But they were unwavering, persistent, and founded on a devotion that Roseanne later recognized as maternal. As time went on, Roseanne started to see June for more than just her stepmother. To all intents and purposes, she was like having a second mother. I didn't have a straightforward understanding. It was gradual, but it happened as Roseanne became a mother and realized there are numerous sorts of love. They are all genuine, some of them subtle and imperfect. In her memory, June's giggles would resound through a home that had to as frequently been shrouded in melancholy and quiet. That being in her stepmother's company could make even the worst day bearable. June never stopped caring, never stopped coming up, and always found a way to convince Roseanne that she was loved, even when she resented her. At the age of 70, Roseanne has come clean about the fact that her misinterpretation of others' distance or dominance was actually her body protecting itself from the immense pressures she was under. Hidden beneath her strong exterior was a tender heart that could welcome not just her spouse but also their children. Ultimately, Roseanne realized that June's devotion was unconditional and did not require any effort on her part. It had never wavered, unmoved, and constant, regardless of how long it took her to realize it. After the death of June Carter Cash in May, of the passing of a country music icon, was a global tragedy in 2003. However, Rosanne Cash's grief was profound and multi-layered, extending well beyond the realm of public mourning. June had been a whirlwind of emotions: stepmother, mentor, protector, disciplinarian, and over time, a surrogate mother figure. After she departed, Roseanne felt a mix of thankfulness and remorse. Apologies for the many unspoken comments and decades-long silences, but also grateful for the years of support June gave Johnny and the ways she weathered storms no one else could have. When Roseanne found it difficult to adequately convey the depth of her feelings for June, Roseanne said, "It felt like the family's foundation had changed irrevocably in the days after June's death. With Johnny's health deteriorating fast in the wake of her death, the family as a whole felt the crushing burden of an unfathomable loss. Filled." At that moment, Roseanne understood how June's presence had truly grounded them. The power, the humor, and the music weren't the only factors. It served as a continual reminder that June would always find a way to bring order out of chaos. There was an ear-splitting stillness in her absence. In an effort to find the times when June's love had spoken louder than words, Roseanne started going over old recollections. June had offered her subtle support and counsel, and she pondered about it. She didn't realize she needed to thank her until after it was too late. Roseanne was finally compelled to face her emotions after June's death, something she had avoided doing for a long time. It became painfully clear to her how profoundly June had impacted her life. Her tenacity as a person and her success as a musician, feminine figure. Roseanne said it best when she said that death can reveal hidden realities that were there all along but were hidden from view while a person was living. The reality was straightforward for her. June Carter had been her rock, her confidant, and an integral part of her upbringing. This insight helped her heal, but it also made her sad for the times she felt ashamed or embarrassed to speak up about things she now wished she had. Roseanne started becoming more forthcoming about her stepmother following June's passing. In neither the legendary nor the larger-than-life sense performer who the world adored, but also as the mother who had been there through the mundane, unglamorous moments of raising a family, preventing the ship from capsize. Despite the lingering sadness, she was filled with immense appreciation for the opportunity to fully express her deepest feelings for June. Roseanne Cash has mustered the guts to talk frankly about June Carter, despite being 70 years old. Plus, by doing so, she has let the world in on a secret that she had been harboring for decades. The edges have become less sharp as a result of time, maturity, and her own life's lengthy journey. From her own childhood recollections, which enable her to perceive June not as a daughter vying for personal space, but as a lady who knows the meaning of love, sacrifice, and perseverance. In retrospect, Roseanne sees June as more than just a stepmother. She stood firm as the glue that held a family that, had they allowed themselves to become famous and addicted, would have otherwise crumbled. Finally, she can state without reservation that June's love was neither conditional nor selective. She remembers Chun's faith, joy, and commanding presence. It was unwavering, unmoved, and genuine. At 70 years old, Roseanne reflects on her silence. As a result of her fears and her anxiety of recognizing her debt to a woman who did not give birth to her but played an important role in her upbringing. When Roseanne thinks about her own children and grandkids, she realizes lessons from June everywhere. Her ability to forgive herself and others, her skill at juggling her professional and personal life, and her nurturing of her family are all examples of this. Her recent remarks are illuminating and moving for viewers who have always wanted to know Roseanne's honest feelings about her stepmother. Love isn't always easy, and she describes the tensions, underlying conflicts, and bitterness that characterize their connection with Cador, demonstrating that familial ties are frequently formed through conflict as much as love. Roseanne Cash has finally reconciled herself with the legacy of June Carter. Not only did she inspire her father to persevere, but she also provided Roseanne the strength to discover her own voice, solidifying her place in country music history. Even though June Carter was her stepmother, she was also her teacher, her defender, and in the most profound sense, her mother. And now, at the age of 70, she has finally let the truth in.